What would actually happen to your body if you stop moving for just one day? Not weeks, not months, just a single day of sitting still. Because something begins to change much faster than most people expect. Blood flow slows, muscles start switching off, and deep inside the body, systems designed for movement begin adapting to stillness. Some of these changes don't take days. They begin almost immediately. Within hours, the body is already adjusting, shifting into a completely different state. And one of the first systems to respond is circulation. The human body is designed for constant, low-level motion. Walking, standing, shifting position. These small movements help push blood through the body. Even tiny contractions in the legs act like a second pump, keeping circulation moving throughout the day. But when movement stops, that system loses its support. Blood flow slows, especially in the lower body. The muscles that normally push blood back toward the heart, especially in the legs, become less active. Blood begins to pool more easily. Oxygen delivery becomes less efficient, and the cardiovascular system quietly starts working harder to compensate. Most people never feel this happening, but it's one of the first adjustments the body makes, and it can begin within a single afternoon of sitting. But circulation is just the beginning, because something else starts changing at the same time, something that affects almost every system in the body. Muscles are not passive tissue. They need regular activation to stay strong and functional. When movement decreases, those signals begin to fade. And when that happens, the body shifts into conservation mode. Muscle fibers begin to shrink, a process called atrophy, not dramatically at first, but measurably. Even within a few days of reduced movement, muscle protein synthesis begins to decline. The body stops investing energy in maintaining muscle and starts redirecting it elsewhere. Research has shown that just 48 hours of inactivity can begin reducing the rate at which muscle repairs and rebuilds itself. That's not weeks of neglect. That's a single slow weekend. And that shift matters far beyond strength, because muscle tissue isn't just for movement. It's one of the primary regulators of the body's metabolism. And this is where things start to shift in a way most people don't expect. Muscle doesn't just help the body move. It plays a central role in how the body handles energy. It supports insulin sensitivity. It helps regulate blood sugar. And after meals, it's responsible for clearing a large portion of glucose from the bloodstream. But when muscle activity drops, that process slows down too. Glucose that would normally be absorbed and used begins circulating longer than it should. Blood sugar becomes slightly harder to regulate. Energy is used less effectively. And the body begins storing more than it burns, not because food intake changed, but because output did. This is one of the most overlooked effects of inactivity. The body doesn't need extreme change to shift its metabolism. It just needs less movement. Here's the part that surprises most people. Less movement doesn't conserve energy. It actually drains it. When the body is inactive for long stretches, circulation slows, oxygen delivery decreases, and cellular energy production becomes less efficient. The mitochondria, the structures inside cells responsible for generating energy, become less active when the body isn't regularly challenged by movement. Over time, they become less efficient at producing the energy the body needs to function well. The result is a different kind of fatigue, not from overexertion, but from underuse. A slower, heavier feeling, lower motivation, less drive to move at all. And this is where inactivity becomes a loop. Less movement leads to lower energy. Lower energy makes movement feel harder. The cycle reinforces itself quietly and consistently. But inactivity doesn't just affect the body. It reaches into the brain as well. When the body moves, blood flow to the brain increases. Neurotransmitters are released. Mental clarity improves. These aren't side effects of exercise. They're direct biological responses to physical movement. One of those neurotransmitters is dopamine, which plays a major role in motivation, focus, and the sense of reward. Movement helps trigger its release. Stillness reduces it. Another is serotonin, which helps regulate mood and emotional stability. When movement drops consistently, both systems receive less stimulation, and the effects show up in how a person thinks, feels, and functions day to day. Focus becomes harder to maintain. Mood can become more flat. The brain receives fewer of the inputs it depends on to stay sharp and engaged. This is why prolonged inactivity is often linked to mental fatigue, not just physical. The brain and the body are running on the same system, and while all of this is happening internally, something is shifting on the outside too. When the body stays in one position for long periods, especially sitting, certain muscles become overactive while others weaken entirely. The hips tighten, the core disengages, the upper back rounds forward. The glutes, some of the largest and most important muscles in the body, stop firing the way they're supposed to. This is sometimes called gluteal amnesia. The muscles don't disappear. They simply stop being recruited efficiently. Over time, these imbalances change how the body moves when it finally does move. Stiffness increases. Range of motion decreases. Discomfort appears in the lower back, neck, and shoulders, not from a sudden injury, but from a gradual structural drift. The body isn't just losing fitness, it's reorganizing itself around stillness. And quietly, in the background, something else is building. Low levels of movement are associated with increases in low-grade systemic inflammation. The body becomes less efficient at regulating immune responses. Recovery slows. Small stressors have a larger impact. This kind of chronic, low-level inflammation doesn't announce itself. There's no sudden pain or obvious signal, but it accumulates. And over time, researchers have linked it to a wide range of long-term health concerns, from metabolic dysfunction to cardiovascular risk. This isn't something felt immediately, but over weeks and months, it shapes how the body feels day to day. Energy levels, soreness, resilience, mood. None of these changes require complete immobility. They begin with something far more common: sitting for long periods, moving less throughout the day. And that's what makes this relevant to almost everyone. Here's the idea that ties all of this together, and it's not what most people expect. The body doesn't just adapt to movement, it adapts to whatever it experiences most consistently. And when stillness becomes the dominant signal, the body optimizes for that instead. Movement begins to feel harder. Starting feels harder. The baseline shifts not dramatically at first, but enough to change what feels normal. And what makes this particularly important is that the adaptation isn't just physical. The nervous system recalibrates too. The brain begins to associate movement with effort rather than normalcy. The threshold for initiating activity quietly rises. What once felt easy begins to feel like work. And that shift in perception is just as real as any physical change happening in the muscle or the bloodstream. Scientists studying sedentary behavior have found that even small breaks in sitting, standing briefly, walking short distances, shifting positions can interrupt these adaptation processes before they compound. The body doesn't need a full workout to respond. It needs a signal. Even brief movement can begin nudging the system back in the other direction. The body is always listening. And the signal it responds to most isn't the intensity of a workout. It's the pattern of everyday movement or the absence of it. So what actually happens when the body stops moving? Circulation slows. Muscles begin to weaken. Metabolism becomes less efficient. Energy drops. The brain receives fewer signals. Posture shifts. Inflammation increases. None of these changes are dramatic on their own, but together, they change how the body feels and how it functions. Because the body doesn't need extreme inputs to adapt, it needs consistent ones. And when movement disappears from that pattern, the system adjusts. The changes don't start after weeks, they start within hours, quietly building, reinforcing themselves over time, until stillness begins to feel normal, even when it isn't. Because movement is only one part of the equation. Even when the body is active, something else can still limit how it performs. Something most people do every single day, without realizing what it's doing inside the body. And what that does over time is even more surprising. Because the way you fuel your body can either support everything you just saw, or quietly make it worse.